The Nekker pack's attack was 2 minutes away. Geralt could see nothing with the naked eye, but his war dog Wolf was already taking position. The assault was coming. Wolf was no ordinary dog. The massive gray and black warhound, standing nearly 3 feet at the shoulder, with piercing yellow eyes, had been Geralt of Rivia's constant companion for 5 years. While most witchers traveled alone, Geralt had found in Wolf something his mutations couldn't provide: loyalty uncomplicated by fear. The dog's lineage traced back to the warhounds of Skellige, bred for centuries to hunt alongside warriors against both men and monsters. Wolf possessed the size and strength to bring down a Nekker, the intelligence to distinguish between threatening and harmless creatures, and senses that could detect danger long before even a witcher's enhanced abilities registered threats. On this autumn evening, they traveled through the dense forests of Velen, escorting a merchant caravan from Oxenfurt to Novigrad. The contract was routine: 3 wagons loaded with rare books and alchemical supplies, 6 merchants and 2 guards who looked more comfortable in taverns than facing monsters. Geralt rode Roach at the caravan's head, his silver and steel sword secured across his back, cat eyes scanning the tree line. The road through Velen was notorious for monster activity, particularly Nekkers, small, aggressive humanoid creatures that hunted in packs and showed no fear of humans. Wolf trotted alongside Roach, his powerful frame moving with fluid grace. Unlike domestic dogs, he rarely barked or showed excitement. Instead, he communicated through subtle changes in posture, the angle of his ears, the rhythm of his gait. Geralt had learned to read these signals like a language. As they reached a narrow stretch where ancient oaks formed a tunnel over the road, Wolf's demeanor shifted dramatically. The warhound's ears snapped to attention. His pace changed from relaxed trot to purposeful stalk, muscles coiled beneath his thick coat. Geralt felt the change immediately. In 5 years of partnership, Wolf's warnings were never false alarms. The dog's senses could detect Nekker musk from nearly a mile away, could hear their chittering communication through frequencies that even Witcher hearing missed. "Halt," Geralt called softly to the caravan. The merchants began asking questions, but he silenced them with a sharp gesture. Wolf had stopped completely, his yellow eyes fixed on a specific section of forest to their left. His nose worked constantly, processing information that painted a detailed picture of approaching threats. "What is it?" asked Aldrich, the elder guard brother, trying to keep his voice steady. Geralt dismounted from Roach, watching Wolf's body language intensify. The dog had shifted into full hunting mode. Weight forward, head low, tail straight and still. "Nekkers," Geralt said quietly, drawing his silver sword. "Wolf can smell at least a dozen. They're moving to surround us." The merchant's nervous chatter turned to frightened whispers. Wolf moved closer to Geralt, positioning himself where he could see both Forest and his human partner. His ears remained locked onto the approaching threats, tracking movement with supernatural precision. "Form a circle around the wagons," Geralt ordered. "Keep the merchants in the center. Don't break formation until I give the signal." Aldrich and Willem moved to obey, though their hands shook as they drew steel swords. Against Nekkers, steel would work, but the brothers had clearly never faced monsters before. Wolf began a slow circle around the entire group, his nose constantly working as he mapped the locations of every approaching Nekker. His behavior told Geralt everything he needed to know. They were completely surrounded, outnumbered at least 3 to 1, and the attack would come from multiple directions within minutes. The warhound paused at 3 specific points during his circle, marking where the largest concentrations of Nekkers were gathering. His intelligence showed in how he returned to Geralt, and used subtle head movements to indicate the primary threat vectors. "They're in the trees, too," Geralt muttered, noting how Wolf's attention shifted between ground level and the canopy above. The attack would be coordinated, ground assault from 3 sides while others dropped from branches. The forest had grown unnaturally quiet. Every natural creature had fled, leaving only the Nekkers and their intended prey. In the silence, Geralt could finally hear what Wolf had detected much earlier: the subtle scratching of claws on bark, the soft chittering of Nekker communication. Wolf positioned himself between the merchants and the direction from which the primary attack would come. His instincts told him to protect the weakest members first. The assault began exactly as Wolf had predicted. A shrieking call echoed from the forest, the Nekker war cry. 3 separate groups burst from the tree line simultaneously, while 4 more Nekkers dropped from overhead branches, claws extended and fangs bared. Wolf reacted before the first Nekker touched ground. The war hound launched himself at the largest creature, dropping toward the merchants, catching it in midair, with jaws that snapped shut around its throat. The impact sent both animals crashing into the wagon side, but Wolf maintained his grip until the Nekker stopped moving. Geralt moved with fluid precision, his silver sword carving through Nekker flesh as he engaged the ground assault. The merchants huddled together, screaming as claws raked at wagon canvas, and Nekker shrieks filled the night air. Aldrich and Velen fought bravely but clumsily, their steel swords hacking at Nekkers that moved too quickly for untrained fighters. One brother took a deep gash across his arm while the other stumbled backward, but Wolf had become a force of nature unleashed. The warhound moved between threats with lethal efficiency, his powerful jaws crushing Nekker skulls, while his massive paws knocked smaller attackers away from vulnerable merchants. A Nekker managed to slip past Geralt's guard, leaping directly toward the youngest merchant. Wolf intercepted the creature with a flying tackle that sent both tumbling away from the wagons. The Nekker's claws raked across Wolf's flank, drawing blood, but the warhound's momentum carried them both into a nearby tree trunk with bone-crushing impact. As the initial wave of Nekkers fell, a larger shape emerged from the forest depths. The Nekker pack leader, nearly twice the size of its subordinates, strode into the firelight with intelligence gleaming in its dark eyes. Scars covered its mottled skin, and it carried a crude but effective bone club. The pack leader's arrival changed the entire fight dynamic. The remaining Nekkers regrouped around their alpha, moving with greater coordination. Instead of wild individual attacks, they began flanking maneuvers that tested even Geralt's enhanced reflexes. Wolf immediately recognized the pack leader as the primary threat. The warhound positioned himself between the alpha Nekker and Geralt, his hackles raised and lips pulled back to reveal fangs stained with Nekker blood. The Nekker pack leader studied Wolf with calculating intelligence, recognizing a fellow apex predator. It raised its bone club and let loose a howling cry that sent the remaining Nekkers into a coordinated frenzy. With a snarl that echoed through the forest, Wolf charged the Nekker alpha, using his superior size and momentum to drive the creature backward. The pack leader's club whistled through empty air as Wolf ducked under the swing and clamped his jaws around the Nekker's weapon arm. The battle between predators was brutal and brief. Wolf's warhound breeding showed in every calculated move. The Nekker pack leader fought with desperate intelligence, but ultimately couldn't match the combat evolution that had produced Wolf's bloodline. When the pack leader fell with Wolf's fangs around its throat, the remaining Nekkers lost coordination entirely. Deprived of their alpha's leadership, they reverted to individual panic, fleeing back into the forest depths. Geralt dispatched the last 2 Nekkers with efficient sword work, then turned to assess casualties. Aldrich sported claw marks but would survive. Velen had taken a bite on his shoulder that would need cleaning. The merchants were terrified but unharmed, protected by Wolf's aggressive defense. The war hound stood over the Nekker pack leader's corpse, blood matting his gray coat where claws had found their mark. But his yellow eyes remained alert, scanning the forest for remaining threats. Only when Geralt approached and placed a hand on his massive head did Wolf allow himself to relax. "Good boy," Geralt said quietly. "You saw them coming long before I did." The dog's tail wagged once, the closest Wolf ever came to showing pleasure. For him, protecting his pack was simply instinct, as natural as breathing. The remainder of their journey to Novigrad passed without incident, though Wolf maintained constant vigilance until they reached the city gates. The merchants paid Geralt's fee with generous bonuses, but their true gratitude was reserved for the warhound, who had stood between them and death. In the tavern that night, Geralt sat in his usual corner while Wolf rested at his feet, accepting scraps of meat from grateful merchants. The story of the Nekker battle spread quickly through the common room. "Most witchers work alone," observed the tavern keeper. "Why do you travel with a dog?" Geralt scratched behind Wolf's ears. "Because sometimes even witchers need someone watching their backs. Wolf sees threats I miss, fights enemies I can't reach, protects people I can't be everywhere to guard." The warhound opened one yellow eye to study his human partner, then closed it again and returned to his rest. Tomorrow would bring new contracts, new dangers, new monsters to face. But whatever came, they would face it together. Their partnership had saved lives tonight, as it had many times before. In a world where monsters lurked in every shadow and trust was a luxury few could afford, the bond between Geralt and Wolf represented something pure and unbreakable. Heroes came in many forms on the continent, witchers with their mutations, sorceresses with their power, knights with their codes. But sometimes the most reliable hero was simply a loyal companion who would never abandon his pack, no matter the odds. Wolf had earned his rest and his place at Geralt's side for whatever adventures tomorrow might bring.